Hello and welcome to Kalamazoo You. This is a program where we have conversations with City of Kalamazoo staff on important issues and topics in the City of Kalamazoo. I'm Mike Smith. I'm the Communication Manager for the City of Kalamazoo and welcome you to this program. On this segment, we are talking about city zoning and housing and economic development in the City of Kalamazoo. And with us to talk about these issues are Sharilyn Parsons, you're the Community Development Manager for the City of Kalamazoo, and also Christina Anderson, you are the Deputy Director and City Planner and Community Development and Community Planning and Economic Development for the City of Kalamazoo. So thank you both for being here to talk about this particular issue. First, let's talk about housing and what is affordable housing. And I bring this up because the City of Kalamazoo, like much of the nation, is grappling with this particular issue. So basically, how did we get here?
Yeah, so I'll keep that answer pretty just high level because there are a lot of components that go into that. Essentially though, when we had the housing crash that began in 2008, between 2008 and 2010, we had construction rates that were happening at what would be considered construction rates happening based on demand. We had enough construction happening to meet the current demand. After the housing crash, we just have not been able to keep up with construction. So we have run into a lack of supply given the demand. The amount of people that need housing and the supply of housing that is A, available, and B, being built is just not keeping pace. So we really need to focus on increasing the supply to be able to address what is happening with the lack of supply.
And at a more local level to Kalamazoo, we had some regulations in place that served as barriers to housing development. So we had a zoning code that was updated in the early 2000s that really focused on one type of housing, so single family homes on large lots with big setbacks. And we do have that in Kalamazoo, but we have a lot of land that was laid out well before World War II, small lots, smaller houses, kind of irregular shaped lots, and the zoning code that we had didn't match those lots. And so that really served as a barrier to getting new development in those areas because the lots were considered non-conforming. And what that word means is that the zoning rules that are in place, things like lot size, like things like area or width or depth of those lots were less than the minimum standards in the zoning code. And in order to develop on a lot that's non-conforming, you need extra permissions. So we were automatically making people jump through hoops. We had the issue of, we kind of boiled it down to two issues. We had what I just described was, it may have been the right zoning district, meaning a residential district located in an area that we would want residential, but the standards are wrong. Or we had issues where we had the wrong district, like a commercial district or industrial district, in areas that were residential. So in those cases, we had wrong district and wrong standards. And this really came to light after we had Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, which created our current master plan. We started to dive into neighborhood plans and discussions and looking at zoning maps and getting into details with neighborhoods, and this really kind of came to a head and as a light that this was a challenge. And so we embarked on some immediate changes to help alleviate that. But that historically has kept us, large lot, single family home, which is perfectly fine, but does not meet the needs of everybody in the community. It may not meet their needs because they can't afford it. It may not meet their needs because it's not what they want. Not everybody wants a lawn, house to manage. We tend to want different housing based on where we are in our life cycle, right? A one person household, either early in our life or late in our life, small family, empty nesters, couples, and so there's different desires and needs based on your life cycle. And when we have only permitted or promoted one type of housing, then we're kind of missing a big segment of our population.
So the population is aging. At one time, we had large families. Now we have smaller families, maybe no families or kids at all in the household. So the need for that kind of housing has changed over the years, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the zoning code was not taking that into account. Now, the zoning code is not the end-all and be-all, and I think through this conversation we'll talk about some of the other things that are out there, and Sharilyn mentioned just basic supply-demand challenges. But the zoning is in our control meaning city control. And so, when we see that it's a barrier, it's then our job to make the change to make sure that that is not the issue that's keeping us from realizing, the supply that we need.
Talk about the updates to the code that's taking place.
Sure. So, this is back in we approved our master plan in 2017 in October. The following year, we started the neighborhood plans. The North Side plan was one, and Edison that particularly brought these challenges to light. And we brought forth the first round of edits to the zoning code in winter of 2019. So what we did was, the numbers for non-conforming lots were astronomical, right? It was, in some areas, between 60 and 80% of the lots were technically non-conforming with the zoning code. And so our first order of business was just to figure out how do we adjust the standards to just make those lots buildable without having extra steps or hoops. And so we did a zoning stress test, which meant that we looked at our lots, looked at our size, tried to figure out what the common lot size was, lot width, lot area, and made that the threshold, the minimum for our zoning code. At the same time, we allowed accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units are, you hear a lot about them. They've been called granny flats. Mm-hmm. They've been called, a cottage in the back. There's all sorts of different names for them. What it is it's a smaller unit that exists on the lot. It's like a secondary building. It could be above a garage, like a carriage house. It could be at grade. But we permitted those immediately back in 2019. And so those were some of the changes that we made. We knew a big overhaul of the residential zoning districts was going to be complicated and have a lot of conversation behind it. We needed to make changes immediately just to relieve the pressure and to make sure lots weren't all considered non-conforming. At the time, we knew we were slowly updating all of the zoning code, right? And so we relieved that pressure pretty quickly and then went on to update the downtown zoning code, all the commercial zoning code, and the corridors. And the corridors are important because those are areas that in Kalamazoo are a mix of commercial and residential. And so making sure that we were really supporting residential in those areas and for, slightly higher intensity residential, so not just single family on some of those major streets, things like Portage and Burdick and Rose. Wanting to make sure that we're allowing it there. So we have not overhauled the residential districts yet. We're going to get to that soon, but we have in all of our other districts and other places, we've tried to look to make sure how we allow housing.
So how will zoning have an impact on our housing challenges and needs, and how can zoning help with a housing crisis?
So I'd like to jump in here just for a minute, just to make sure that, as we're talking about zoning and we're thinking about really zoning is identifying what's allowed in a place, what's allowed in a residential district, what's allowed in a manufacturing district. And I just want to make sure that we address right sizing the zoning code does not mean it's going to change the look of any neighborhood or any street or any area. So Christina just mentioned residential, and that there are some needs for the residential zoning to change, meaning what's allowed in a residential area. That's not going to take away from what's already happening, the loveliness of residential neighborhoods and the neighborhood that I live in or you live in or anyone that may be watching this lives in. It's just allowing for what's there and creating an opportunity for some of the beauty of what existed in the past, but because zoning code changed at one time, it's no longer allowed now. So Christina mentioned these accessory dwelling units, and I think this is a great example of how zoning changes sort of squashed something that was really evident in the city of Kalamazoo before the zoning somehow changed to disallow that. So she mentioned these accessory dwelling units. If you drive through a lot of our, like the Westwood neighborhood or the Vine neighborhood specifically, you'll see these detached garages that have these little apartment or like art studios above them. They're all around. They're all around our city, and they are part of what creates sort of the character and the coolness of the city of Kalamazoo. But then we had different zoning standards come in, and it was, no, what we really want to see is just one unit on one lot, and we would like to see a bunch of green space. So when she talks about setbacks, for anybody who might be watching this, that means where physically does the building have to sit? And if we're saying that a setback has to be 25 feet off the road, what the city is saying is we want these huge, long, green space yards, and that's what we want to see. Whereas really for someone walking along the sidewalk, if the house was 10 feet up, which would allow some room in the back for one of these garage with an art studio or an apartment on the back, it would still retain the flair and the character of the neighborhoods that we live in. It wouldn't alter anything, and it helps to address the supply issues that we're having. City of Kalamazoo is a pretty built out community, and so we really need to maximize the land use. So I just wanted to jump in there because sometimes I think when we talk about changes, it can make people nervous. Like, oh, you're gonna change the look and the feel of my neighborhood. Absolutely not. These are changes that actually will allow some opportunities for additional housing to come in to areas where there's already room for it. It's already happening, and it also allows for those who are homeowners already to be part of the solution. And so it would give those who are like, oh, well, I do have this yard, this large backyard, and if zoning was allowing me to put a granny flat, I would love to have a mother-in-law suite in my back area. But if the zoning currently doesn't allow it, just because you happen to be in a geographical area that says, no, you can't do that, then we as a city are actually having a part in why the supply continues to be less than what it should be. Just wanted to jump in there,
Yeah, no, I
Christina.
appreciate that.
Yep.
There's two things that makes me think about. One, the work that Kalamazoo has done to update its zoning code has been very slow and incremental, and I'll call it even painstaking, right? We have done a lot of work to look at our lots and blocks and make sure that the zoning standards that we're putting down work for us, right? We're not taking that code from another city and plopping it down, or not being mindful of heights in an area, or patterns of building massing or setbacks from the from property line. We know different when we get to residential, right? There are definitely things that we can include in the code to allow some more housing opportunities within our neighborhoods without a significant change in physical appearance for those that are walking, biking, driving through a neighborhood. So that's one. When we update the code, it will be very thoughtful in that way. We are not talking about, I think when people hear changes to residential zoning or density, they think, oh, a 6-story building is going to get plopped next to me. Like, no, absolutely not. It's far more thoughtful and nuanced than that. That's part one. The second thing that I wanted to say is, when I give presentations around the country at conferences on zoning and its impacts, one of the things, I always have a slide that shows a scene from the movie Field of Dreams when they're emerging from the cornfields. Zoning zoning is one thing we need to get right. We need to set the stage for what we want to have happen in Kalamazoo. It is not end all and be all, right? It is a base layer. You have to have that right, so then you can move on to whatever the next steps are for construction or rehab or whatever it may be. So if you zone it, it will happen. It's not necessarily a perfect correlation, right? We want to make sure that we're setting the table, but there are other forces that exist in our world that we also need to grapple with and think through to make sure that we're getting what we envisioned, which in Kalamazoo is more housing in more locations of different sizes and of different price points.
And so what we're doing is we're making housing available in different styles and different methods and all that in different locations as well. So maybe we can talk about what we're seeing in terms of housing strategy, perhaps, as well as some of the different kinds of projects that are taking place right now and maybe in the near future as well with regard to housing and changes in housing.
Yeah, so when we talk about our housing strategy in light of this conversation and how the housing strategy and the zoning really go hand in hand. So the three components of our housing strategy where I think getting the zoning correct is really important is first is really increasing supply, which I've said over and over again because that is one of the components that we talk about in our master plan, which is kind of our guiding document on the vision of what we want the city to look like. And then we also have it in the housing strategy, that increase of supply. And as Christina mentioned, supply of many different housing types. So from the studio apartments all the way up to the 4-bedroom detached single family home with the yard space that somebody wants. So the whole sort of ecosystem of housing supply, we want to increase that. We also then have an existing housing stock that we want to preserve, and that's equally as important as increasing supply. So we want to preserve our existing housing stock. We have an older housing stock here in the city of Kalamazoo. So we need to make sure that we have strategies and that we have partnerships and that we're looking for different funding opportunities that would preserve existing housing stock. And then also maximize that housing stock. So is there a way to increase units through what we have already? And then I think the third part of the housing strategy that really fits with this is the piece that really allows the current residents to thrive within or amidst development and construction. These are really important components when we're thinking about the housing strategy. And so with, I think the second part of your question was to talk about projects.
Some of the projects that are taking place right now and upcoming as well, fairly quickly too. So
yeah, so the city of Kalamazoo actually has made great strides when it comes to supply. I have been talking to a lot of different cities, townships, villages, really from Tennessee to, I talked to some people that were out of Colorado. I even talked to someone from Canada who have called the city to ask about some different things happening here. So the city of Kalamazoo, we have had in the past 5 years, 20 different developments that have been going on or completed. 20 different housing developments in this time where a lot of places are struggling getting one or two. And I think that's in part because of the intentionality of having the housing strategy. The 20 different housing developments that have been going on are servicing all of the diversity of need. So from the older or aging population to the young professional who might just have one person in their family or 2 professional people. We have affordable projects going on. We have transitional housing projects going on. We have shelters that have been expanding. We have new long-term shelter that is going on. So we really are seeing the development happening. I say 20, and people are going to be like, well, where are they happening? Some are completed. Some are taking existing buildings. So we have a development happening downtown Kalamazoo that's taking an existing office building and converting it. So if people are thinking the traditional, well, I want to see a new building being erected, not all of these are that. They're maximizing what's already there and utilizing it for more units. But we do have new construction. If you drive into like the North Side neighborhood, you're going to see the Legacy, which is a senior housing project. You're going to see River's Edge going on, which is on Harrison and Go, and that's a mixed use and mixed use multi-unit. So there's some commercial in it, there's some live work units, there's affordable units, there's market rate units. So we're being really deliberate as far as serving the need. We then also have all the time happening opportunities for preservation. So we partner with our nonprofits who have housing as their mission and goal. And so we have preservation strategies that are going on, critical care, critical code repair, critical housing repair. We have roof programs that are going on. So we are seeing those preservation and those new constructions and those renovation projects happening even today as we speak.
So a lot of great things happening in the city of Kalamazoo. So we appreciate you giving us that information as well. So too.
I just want to add to that. So we said at the beginning, oh, we need all this housing, right? We do need all this housing. We have a supply and demand issue. We've been very fortunate to get some projects off the ground in the last 5 to 7 years. Those projects were difficult to get off the ground.
Yes.
There were a lot of funding challenges. There were a lot of development challenges.
Yes.
And so every one that comes is a struggle, both for the person who's building them as well as for city staff to make sure that we're using our dollars, the dollars that we have effectively to support different types of projects. And so we're always looking for ways to figure out how we can, advance a housing project and make it easier. And one of the biggest things that we've done recently is set up a program of pre-approved plans. And so what this means is that we have worked with an architect to create a set of plans from a small single-family home to a big single-family home, duplex in a variety of configurations. We're working right now on a quadplex, which is a 4-unit, and a 12plex, which is a 12-unit building. These plans are ready to go. They're stamped. They've been reviewed by our building department. They're ready for someone to grab them and build on a lot. The only charge that one has for accessing those plans is the cost of building permits. So what we've done is kind of push aside some of the soft costs, those design costs, architectural costs that one would have to have these set of plans ready to go. That is another part of our strategy that we're always trying to come up with new ideas to help fill in those gaps.
I think that's an excellent point, Christina, because with part of the housing strategy that I sort of was remiss to not mention was the reduction of barriers. We have a part of that. When Christina says, what's the city's part? I say this all the time. You're never going to find me out swinging a hammer, building, a new construction. So even though I work on the housing strategy, I don't build anything. But what I do is I look for opportunities so that it becomes easier for those who do. And so the zoning strategy is one of those ways we can reduce a potential barrier. Make it easier for people to be able to build. Make it make sense for what we're already seeing needs to be built and what people are bringing to want to build. And then what else could we do? And these pre-approved plans, one slight correction is they're not fully stamped. There are
you.
some pieces that the builder would need to come with to make sure that,
Foundation,
yep,
the truss,
the truss, the roof truss.
Yes, thank you for that correction.
But these are available for people who might have a lot already in the city of Kalamazoo and are like, yeah, I would like to build something. They can have these plans, and what they're paying for, there's a cost to them, but all they're paying for is the permits that they need.
Right.
So the plans themselves, the city, we took the onus to work with the architect to design these plans according to Michigan building code standards. So they're designed to standards, they're designed to our zoning codes. So they are meant to be a plug and play. So that's one thing we could do. What does that do? Well, that reduces cost. Someone doesn't have to pay for the plans and working with an architect themselves.
Right.
So that can be anywhere from, depending on the what you're building, a $5,000 to a $17,000 cost. That's real money. It also reduces the time. So one of the things when I started talking to developers who did infill, meaning 1 or 2 units on a parcel rather than apartment building, is they said, time is money in this world. Things are changing. Interest rates change really quickly. Funding opportunities come and go really quickly. And so they're like, if you could reduce time, that helps. So when we talk about the city's responsibility of reducing barrier, we're listening to what are the barriers. So these pre-approved plans, that's money barrier. It's a time barrier. It's a maybe not understanding, how do I work with an architect, or how would I actually know what the code is? Well, you don't have to. We'll do all of that front work for you and provide these, and that way you can do what you do, which is build. So, thinking about how these different strategies play together, and how does zoning and the housing strategy and the pre-approved plan and our partnerships with preservation, how do those all go together? It's in that it's in that bucket of reducing barriers so that housing can happen. And it can happen in such a way that you feel invited to do it. So not only are we setting the table, but we're also letting you know anytime you want to come, you're invited.
And at the end of the day, we're making housing more available for everybody in the community as well.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you very much, both of you, Christina and Sharilyn, for having this conversation. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time.